Hello and welcome to the Silk and Steel podcast once again. I'm your host, Carl Za. Today we have a returning guest, TP Huang, who is an expert in anything China technology related, but is also an expert in Chinese military. For my audience who's not familiar with you, TP, could you do a very quick, brief intro of who you are, what you do, etc.?
Yeah, so I actually started just on the military side of things. I started following Chinese military back in mid 2000s, and then I joined a Chinese military forum called Sino Defense Forum, and I've been like a super moderator there ever since. So I've been spending the good part of 20 years just studying Chinese weapon systems and the technology behind it. So this is a topic I'm really very fascinated about.
Oh, this is a topic we're all very fascinated about, especially, I'm sure, after the result of the China's victory parade that just took place a few days ago. And this is why I brought you here, TP, because China has showcased a lot of new weapon platforms. I think it surprised many. And I need I need your help to help us break it down and what we're seeing here.
Sure, like I think they showcased quite a few systems, but it's such like a broad category. I think it's probably better if we just go through category by category and just talk about the significance of each of them.
Okay, let's go. Which category would you like to start?
So I think the one that's like really struck people's attention to start off are the missiles, right? Because the hypersonic missile has been one of their strong area that everyone knows about for a while now. And this particular parade, they showcased four like YJ missiles that we really haven't seen before: the YJ-15, YJ-17, YJ-19, and YJ-20. And they also showed off some of the hypersonic missiles we already know about, like DF-17 and a new variant of DF-26 called DF-26D. And there was also this new hypersonic land-based cruise missile called CJ-1000. So overall, it kind of just like showcased a really wide um, set of options that they have to deliver a payload on warhead to, I guess, anything within 3,000 kilometers, and some of those weapons can go even a lot further than that. So it's definitely a very, I guess, very terrifying prospect for like some of their adversaries in the region. So, um, so I think like there's a few that was really interesting to us. Like one was the YJ-19 because they made it in such a size that it can fit into the torpedo tubes. And that is really quite interesting because there's a lot of complexity involved in getting the missile to such a dimension that it can fit in the torpedo tube, um, especially something that can fly at a hypersonic speed of like Mach 6 to Mach 8. That's what some of the Chinese social media account is saying. And the implication of that is quite huge because you could have some of these submarines uh, sail out to the ocean, and the diesel submarines are relatively hard to detect uh, in the middle of the ocean when they're not moving, and they can essentially just sit there from different angles, and then once they somehow they get the coordination of where they need to attack, then launch these missiles through their, their torpedo tubes, and um, and it's going to be very hard to defend depending on how far you are because um, the thing about hypersonic cruise missiles is that it can go at once they get to like hypersonic speed, it can stay at that speed for quite a long time, like all the way to the end. and it doesn't fly as high up the horizon as a ballistic missile, so it's a little bit harder to detect. And because the terminal speed is still very fast, so it's very hard to intercept. So this just gives them like another option. And then we also saw the what we call the hypersonic glide vehicles uh, that are uh, designed to fit the VLS, so the universal vertical launch system on the destroyers. And that's kind of interesting because uh, they they're estimated to be able to go like 1,500 to 2,000 kilometers. Maybe that's a little high, but like somewhere in that ballpark. And they probably have pretty high speed in the middle part of it, and maybe a little slower to the end. And the HGVs are pretty hard to intercept also. And if you can actually pack like so I think the other missiles that was kind of interesting is like the DF-17 and DF-20, and they're kind of interesting because they can have relatively long range of 1,500 kilometers or a little more, and also they are going at hypersonic speed, and they don't follow the ballistic missile path, which is goes pretty high up, and their ballistic missiles are a little easier to detect. The HGVs are a little less easy to detect and intercept than the HGVs. And so it's kind of consequential when you can have these in your destroyers because um, something like the 055 has 112 tubes. And if you load like 20, 30 of these HGVs and they can hit targets from 1,500 kilometer out, that's a lot of firepower. And aside from that, they also have this thing called YJ-15, which is an evolution of YJ-12. So what they did is they took an existing missile that was probably had like 400 to 500 kilometer range and can go at probably 3 times the speed of sound, and they made it a little more compact, smaller. They made its warhead a little smaller, and they improved the technology behind it. So now it can go like maybe, uh, faster than Mach 3, and it can go probably, 500 kilometers again. But now you can carry them on your J-15s. So then, on your carrier group, your J-15s can carry 2 of them each, or maybe even 4 of them, and then fly off and then shoot missiles that are probably faster than, um, pretty much what any other naval like aviation force have access to. So like that. So if you can shoot something faster than Mach 3, it's actually really hard to defend because they're not used to seeing, um, supersonic missiles go that fast normally. And so they're also pretty lethal. So basically, what they have is they have the aerial launched really high supersonic. They have uh, the naval surface ship launched um, hypersonic missile, and then they also have the submarine launched hypersonic missile. So that just makes it a lot harder for defenders to defend because now you're facing different missiles from different directions, flying different profiles, which is a lot harder than if you're just dealing with the fastest missile, but it's only coming from one direction and only flying one profile. So
The hypersonic cruise
yeah,
missile, is that new? Because my understanding, cruise missile usually they usually don't fly that fast, right? They fly like the speed of the airplanes. Is this something that unique to China, or is this do other countries possess them as well?
I'm not aware of any other country with hypersonic cruise missiles in
Mm.
production that you can put on the ships themselves. Like the hypersonic missiles itself is pretty much not something that other navies have access to. So I think this is actually pretty unique to China. Like some of the other military around the world, they have land-based launchers of hypersonic. missiles, and they're typically not cruise
Mm.
missiles, I think. Um, so some of them are just ballistic missiles, and other ones are, I think there are some HGVs, but hypersonic cruise missiles that can go for like a good distance. That's that's pretty rare.
And I also want to
So
go back to a basics a little bit. Like, it's my understanding, even regular ballistic missile at the end of its trajectory, it reaches hypersonic speed. So what distinguish a hypersonic missile versus a normal ballistic missile?
um, so I think the hypersonic missiles, it's the CCTV actually had a recent definition for hypersonic missiles, and it's basically something that can go the whole way above Mach 5, and it also needs to be able to do maneuvers and is relatively, accurate, able to hit targets. Like if you look at ballistic missiles, right? They fly the ballistic path, and most of the time it has, like, I guess, an apex speed at the top, and then slows down as it comes down a little bit. So sometimes even if it's you know goes faster than Mach 6 or 7 at some point, it could still slow down by the end, depending on like how long range ballistic missile it is. But more importantly, it is just not able to do the same kind of maneuvers against targets, and it's CEP, basically CEP just measures how accurate um, the missile is against target. It's just not going to be at the same level as a what we call a hypersonic
Right. So
missile.
ballistic missiles, their trajectory is fixed. Once they're fired, we can calculate where it's going to land. Whereas hypersonic missile, they can actually alter their flight path. Right. Once they take flight. And
And not only can they alter flight paths, they can, I think part of it is that they're able to maneuver in such a way that it gets them closer and more accurate to the target. Because some of the ballistic missiles, some of the intercontinental ballistic missiles, and some of the other ballistic missiles can also maneuver, but um, I don't. We wouldn't normally consider them to be hypersonic missiles because don't they don't have the same accuracy when it comes to attacking the end
now, this
targets.
missile, how are you saying they were able to readjust their flight path, to correct for the target? Like, does that mean like they're somehow linked to maybe satellite intelligence to make themselves correct their path and focus to zoom on the target?
I think most of them do have the ability to get updates from satellites. I'm not really sure the process behind the mid-course guidance correction. I do think that, especially with something like cruise missiles, it can, it can change paths uh, a lot more than your uh, your ballistic missiles. And HGV, because it's kind of like just glides at a certain altitude, it can also maneuver a little better than your and are more accurate than your usual ballistic missiles. But there are some ballistic missiles that they have in service, which are also, I guess, considered to be hypersonic missiles because, like the DF-26, because they're pretty much they are, I guess, they at least they're considered to be in the same category just because they're considered to be pretty accurate against the end target. So the definition gets a little murky. Generally speaking, I think the hypersonic missiles, regardless of the definitions, and some of that, maybe I'm a little more liberal about the including some of the ballistic missiles in there, like the DF-26, but as a whole, they generally pose a big threat to the defense. The CJ-1000, that's not something we've seen before, and it is a pretty big missile, and it probably has something close to like a 3,000 kilometer range, and it's a hypersonic cruise missile, so it can um, get to the target pretty quickly. It gives them another profile, another option against, let's say, like a naval ship from Japan or U.S. that are inside the second island chain. And everyone's heard about the DF-17 and 26. So those are the ones that Western analysts know a lot about. So this parade was kind of scary for some of the people because it just introduced a whole new selection of weapons that they have to think about.
Which one is what the Western defense analysts call the Guam killer? Guam is the U.S. military base in Pacific.
They typically think of the
Ah.
DF-26 because it has like about a 4,000 kilometer range. Although they have the new version DF-26D, that one probably has like a 5,000 kilometer range, so it can probably hit Australia, the Northern Australia, and also
But
Alaska.
why call it Guam killer? Because China possessed ICBM before, right? I mean, like China had ICBM since 1981. What makes this DF-26 special?
So like in the actual combat, in actual conflict, ideally we'll never get to a situation where we have to get to nuclear missiles. Because once you start launching like intercontinental missiles, the other side, there's a good chance the other side thinks that a nuclear weapon is coming over. So that's kind of dangerous. So like there needs to be clear delineation of like which missiles are nuclear tips and which ones are not. And there's definitely within the PLA rocket force, there's ones that handle nuclear payload, and there's ones that do not. So in terms of Guam, why Guam itself is important is because it's basically it was at least considered to be the center of U.S.'s defense against Chinese pressure in the West Pacifics, because it's a little further away from the China's mainland. It's like 2,800 kilometer, I think, from the coast, maybe around there. And so some of the missiles that they had before, like DF-17 and DF-16, can't really reach there, and a lot of their earlier cruise missiles just can't go that far. So they had to develop a new series of both ballistic and cruise missiles that can go that far. And something like the H6K with launching cruise missile was part of their arsenal, their plans to be able to deliver enough ammunitions and warheads against the Guam base. So that was why Guam was always considered to be very important, and that's also why America started to invest in building military facilities in Northern Australia, in Darwin, because it's even a little bit further away from China than Guam is, and they're able to build expand on the airfields and the naval bases there. So like America was trying to find places they can operate at are about 3,000 kilometers from China's mainland. So that's why DF-726, when they have the 4,000 kilometer range missile, was in large part to deal with this threat.
Got it. And just the buildup of the spaces on Guam. This started back in Bush years. Donald Rumsfeld. Rumsfeld's idea was to pull back from deployed U.S. Military bases in Korea and Okinawa, and to build up this giant base in Guam that's slightly just out of reach of China, but U.S. will still be able to base attack on Chinese target from there. So now that's they have to go back to the drawing board. This the Guam is considered, I think, what the U.S. calls as the second island chain, and the Chinese aircraft carrier groups have already demonstrated they could reach around the waters around Guam in the recent exercises. And do you think this recent Chinese parade had a impact in that leak Pentagon reports where Pentagon plan where Pete Hegseth said we're gonna focus less on contain China and more on more on the homeland, more on U.S. and Latin America?
I think it's been known for a while to the people in the U.S. intelligence that it's basically they're doomed in Westpac scenario for a lot of reasons, right? Like America is not very focused on Asia, despite the so-called Asia pivot and the Guam buildup, and they wanted to build up other field in the area like the Mariana Islands, I think, Tinian. There's a couple other ones they wanted to build up, but as you can imagine, there's not a lot of people that live in these places. So trying to build bases in places that during peacetime, in like these environments where it takes a lot of effort to actually ship the equipment over and actually do construction. America can't build bases in America. Like building bases halfway across the world is pretty hard for America, right? So because of that, all their efforts basically got concentrated on Guam. And I think that in general, um, it was known like pretty obvious to the U.S. intelligence after a while that the pace of China's missile buildup was far outstripping their ability to defend these bases. And also, America can't really concentrate on one theater, so it expended like all these missiles, air defense missiles in Ukraine and Israel, right? So when you get someone ideologically driven to kneel libs like Joe Biden in power, right? Like he has to continue to tell the world like authoritarian democracies versus autocracies, whereas you get like a more of like I guess a realist kind of people into Defense Department. They might hate China, but they're at least looking at the situation as like this is not going well for us here. So we may need to like pull back on things a little bit.
Well, I,
So I think they know a lot of these weapons before the parade already. It's just like, when they came in, they're like, this is a losing proposition for us.
that makes sense. But I do remember they did try to develop a doctrine where they're gonna build mobile launchers where the U.S. will be able to quickly deploy their missile launching force in one island, fire a Chinese target, and then evacuate and move to a different spot so they don't get hit. I mean, like, do you think that was even realistic?
On paper, but in reality, it's actually really hard to get the support for like fifth generation fighter jet and like advanced bombers in these airfields, right? Because you need certain kind of jet fuel, you need certain kind of maintenance stuff. You can't just land an F-35 and expect it to fly again. You need to do work on it. So there's always this mystery that people are wondering, why do they just think you can just do this like none of the support is required? And I mean, I think like the people that came up with the plans, they were definitely hoping for the best, but you know, there's some reality checks to be concerned about. And to be honest, I think it made sense for them to originally plan to build out airfields that are protected in places like Tinian and Northern Mariana Islands, but you know, the progress on those is very lacking.
Right. I mean, it seems like they're still fighting the last Pacific War, right? They still think it's going to be a replay of World War II, but the whole power balance have shifted. I said many times, if they think it's going to be a replay of Pacific War, it's gonna be the role will be reversed. China will be in the role of United States in 1941, and U.S. will be in the role of Empire of Japan because that's how much the manufacturing power have shifted to the east. Okay, so